This is On the Sofa with Rouge. It's the first one I do recorded with a video for my website, with my YouTube page, which is called On the Sofa with Rouge as well. It's an absolute pleasure to have Maite Facio-Beanland here, and Maite is my cousin, so it's another great opportunity to have her here.
We're cousins.
We're related. We're second cousins actually. And Maite is deaf, and this is, I think, a first. I don't know. I've never seen it being done in Gibraltar before, even on TV. I don't know. Maybe they can tell me otherwise. But it's a real opportunity to get this big message out there. That deaf people need representation in our community, 100%. And I think they've got Maite has a lot of things to say on the subject. So this is why she's here. Maite, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. As you're watching it, whoever's watching it at home or whatever, obviously this is not live. I'm going to be looking at Maite, but Maite's looking at Richard because Richard is translating everything I'm saying. And when Maite speaks, Richard will be her voice, just so that we understand. Although Maite can lip read, and we always are able to understand each other mostly, but for your benefit at home, we've invited Richard very kindly is doing this, just so that everybody can understand what Maite is saying. So hi, great to have you. There's so many things I want to ask you. So the first thing is, what is your first recollection when you were little, that you realized that you were different, that you realized that you were deaf? What do you remember?
Well, it's an interesting question. I was born in Gibraltar, and up until I was 1, I was hearing, and then I got meningitis, and that's how I became deaf.
Okay, through an illness. I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, I was very ill. I wasn't born deaf, so it was after I was born. Yeah. And then I went to the Loreto convent school, but I didn't learn anything there. I mean, it was really poor education because at that time they had no deaf awareness. The teacher would write on the board and talk to the board, and I couldn't lip read the back of her head. Luckily, I had some good friends that would help me with the work. I mean, I cheated a lot. I just copied my friends. The teacher thought I was a really good student, but I didn't. I had no idea, especially about English.
So, what about your parents? What did they think when they realized suddenly that maybe they had to do something different, or how did they react?
Well, so after I was ill with meningitis, in 24 hours my whole life changed. It was kind of like everything. I didn't like it when it was dark because I couldn't hear when it was dark. I was like an owl at night, trying to see everything, so I preferred daylight. But that's how they kind of started to realise what was wrong. And my mum was quite young at the time. She was only 20 herself.
Very young.
And she was the person that recognised at first that I was deaf, and the rest of the family didn't believe her.
What?
Yeah, they sent me to France initially, and also to Tangier, and then finally to England to be tested, because I was a very lively child, so it's very difficult to diagnose that I'm deaf because I was so active. I would just be looking at everything, and because I was actually kind of attracted by movement, they didn't realise it was deaf, so I would just be watching everything, so it wasn't obvious. So with trees waving in the wind, I would be looking at those, and they thought, oh, there's nothing wrong with her hearing, but it was with my eyes. In France, the doctor first recognised that I was deaf, and it was very hard for my family to accept. We were very old-fashioned, you know, we hid disabled people away at that time, but my mum never did that to me. My mum was very open and let me to have a similar life to other children, which was really good.
Really important, really important.
Yeah.
And
that time, I mean, my mum was young and she didn't know anything about deafness.
Exactly.
Yeah, and she was very strong in her character, and she knew what she wanted to do and what was best for me. So I went to a hearing school, the convent, until I was 11.
Okay.
But before that, I'd always thought I was the only deaf person in the whole wide world. And I was disappointed to find when my parents sent me to boarding school in the UK, in York. It's called Boston Spa School for the Deaf. I was really shocked because I saw all of these jobs. It was lovely. It was really lovely.
And how was that?
I didn't feel isolated.
And now, by that time, when you got to school in England, you were 11 years old. So that is another big thing as well, because you were very young and you had to leave little Jib, protected by your family. The frontier was closed. No, the frontier was closed, and you had to go.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, you had to go and go to the school. Could you sign? Could you? What was your form of communication?
Well, at that time, my school wasn't a signing school, it was an oral school, so no signing was allowed. But after school, of course, we would sign in secret, you know, between ourselves. And so when I went to school, I learnt the language very quickly. I advanced very quickly. And I was so happy there. Luckily, my father could afford for me to go, and I would come over back to Gibraltar in the summer, at half term, at Christmas.
Yeah. So in those days, the government wouldn't send you. I mean, you could only go to a special school like this if your family could afford to send you.
No, yes, that's correct. My father paid for everything. He worked very, very hard. I mean, the border was closed at that time.
Yeah.
The business situation here was dire, so he worked very long hours to save up the money to get the best education for me.
That is.
I mean, now I look back and I thank God.
Very grateful to your parents, both of them, of course.
Yes, of course, because otherwise I wouldn't be the person that I am today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
thank God for my parents who supported me so much. I've become a better person as a result. I've developed confidence. You know, I've worked with my father for a few years.
Wait a minute. Let's go slowly, because you're very. I want to hear everything, but I want to go stage by stage so we understand the process of how you, for example, you weren't allowed to sign in school. You said, but so it was learning what, lip reading. How did you communicate with your deaf friends?
Well, so all the teachers knew how to communicate clearly with deaf kids, and we had to wear earphones, and the teacher would have a microphone. It's kind of similar to an inductive loop system, so you could only hear the teacher's voice and you'd try and lip read her, and she'd be face to face. She'd never turn her back on you, not like Loretto Convent where they just talk to the blackboard, and that really helped us. But you know, you can't pick up everything from lip reading.
No.
So we pick up maybe, I don't know, say 40%, you'd pick up 60%, you'd miss out on.
Yes.
Now it's completely different. All the schools must have British Sign Language.
And when did it change? Like, how old were you when that changed and then you were able to learn proper sign language to be able to, must have opened a whole new world for you?
Well, so I knew they had British Sign Language, but I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't know signing when I first got there until I was about 1980, I think it would have been, when BSL started becoming more accepted and people became more knowledgeable about it. It used to be like kind of a secret thing, a deaf community where we just use that language. It wasn't in the hearing world. But since then it's become more exposed. And we've got a BSL Act now in the UK, and the same we have in Gibraltar just last year. The British Deaf Association.
So a BSL Act, so explain what that means, please. It's a legal thing to...
Yes, it's legal recognition of the language, and it's a big breakthrough for deaf people. So, you know, you can have an interpreter or you signing at work, or it's been really important that our language, language and culture has been recognised.
Of course, and representation. But what does it mean?
Our identity.
Sorry. What does it mean? I mean, I know it's a huge breakthrough, but does it mean that people have to, when they employ you, somebody has to be able to have this BSL training? How does it affect, you going for a job, for example, or applying for anything? How does it affect? Here?
Well, here it's a great problem. It's really difficult.
Yes.
Nigh and impossible. I mean, that's why we're still GHITA, Gibraltar Hearing Issues and Tinnitus Association, are still fighting the government to provide proper interpreting services for deaf people, so whether or not they're going for a job or whatever, or so that they can have, or any job that you do, that they do provide an interpreting service for meetings or to communicate with other people. That's what we're still fighting, because then it's much easier for deaf people and then feel equal and comfortable to hearing people.
So let me get to the point. Sorry, let me get to the point. I keep saying I don't want to interrupt.
That's fine.
You finish your studies in England, and you're 18 years old. And are you able to go to university? Would you have had that opportunity?
I could have, yes. Well, I wanted to go to college. I wanted to learn more secretarial skills, but unfortunately, my father didn't want me to go away from home again. So I came back here and worked with my father.
And then you worked with your father, right, in the family business. Okay. And
yes, my uncle Albert as well.
How did you find that, coming back to Gib after being in England with lots of people the same as you who understood you, and then you're back in Gib with people who don't understand you, because you have no deaf friends here in Gib, I suppose. I don't know.
Well, when I left school and I came back home, it was really, really hard for me. I mean, I hadn't realised what it was like outside of school, and then getting a job. Life just completely changed, and you had to be more kind of get up and go, and I had to learn what the outside world was like for myself. And I was working with my father, and I couldn't complain, because at the time, I didn't even know that I should be fighting for my rights.
Yes.
That it just wasn't, that they didn't, they just taught me how to do the office work.
Yes.
Well, really they didn't. I had to kind of
learn as you went along. And at any point, did anybody say, look, I'm deaf too, let's get together, let's do something about this? When did that happen?
Well, I have just two friends.
In Gib?
Yes, in Gibraltar. But then they actually went back to the UK and stayed there. And when I came back to Gibraltar, I went to UK, they were here, and when I came back, I saw them, but not very often. And I was older than them, so, so we're very good friends now, and I see them.
Okay. So I want to ask her...
I'm just asking a question about when did they start campaigning?
Yes.
I think April. we're still fighting now for BSL. I mean, there was a march in London about 15 years ago, and we didn't have anything here, of course. She was referencing earlier the BSL Act, which came into force last year, but we were trying in Gibraltar to raise the profile of BSL, and we were campaigning to the government to provide the BSL Act, the same as they had in the UK, and we were successful in that.
Okay, that's
now
good.
they do have that act, but
yes, but nothing's been done about it. So they've got the act, but then there's been no movement after that to do anything to help you. So I want to ask you, what is your favourite form of communication? What do you prefer to do?
Signing, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my first language, because then I understand everything rather than lip reading. I mean, I can understand people, but I miss a lot of information when I'm lip reading. I mean, I wish, I could teach all of my friends to sign.
That's my next question. My next question is there anything you wish hearing people and knew how to communicate with deaf people? Is there anything important that we should know on how to communicate with deaf people? And what is it?
Well, it's really important. I want government to put a GCSE in BSL in every school, because then all the kids can learn.
Yeah.
They're the same as a foreign language. They have those. We have Spanish, Italian, French. We can have BSL now. That
really good idea. Excellent idea.
So that would be, in future they could become a teacher or a nurse or a doctor or a banker, an accountant, or even an interpreter. That would be excellent for Gibraltar. That's my dream aim.
Okay, that's like your goal. Now, how do you put pressure on the government? Do you have regular meetings with them as a committee? Are you part of the committee?
Yes, I am part of GHITA's committee.
Okay.
I'm a committee member.
Okay.
Yes, well, member and committee member.
Okay.
And we've been fighting for that, but there's still a long way to go.
Okay. What are the biggest challenges that you face every day?
Challenges, there's a lot of barriers, I would say. It's all to do with communication. Some hearing people are quite frightened of me. They think, where are you from? They think like I come out of a UFO or something, like because of my voice. They're like surprised by my voice, or I'm like an alien. So that can be really difficult to break through that particular barrier.
Does it bother her?
Sometimes it can be very frustrating.
But do you feel hurt by it?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Of course. I mean, every day. Every day. I mean, the people, think I have such an easy life, but I really don't. I have to be very, very strong and stand up for myself and show everybody who I am.
And you're not just standing up for yourself, because you're standing up. You're standing up for everybody else who's in the same situation as you.
Yes, of course. I've been fighting for the deaf community, absolutely.
Does it make you angry?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, always.
Yeah. Tell me, deaf.
For example, I would go to the doctor.
Yes. So what I was going to ask all these things now. So when you go to the doctor, what happens? You have to explain. I mean, you're married and you've got 2 children. So, so that also is another.
Well, that time was very difficult. When I went to the doctor, my mum would have to come with me to communicate or help me communicate. But my mum helped me a lot as well, especially if the children were ill. I'd have to go with her or my uncle. But now I'm independent and I can do it for myself, and they have a system called Sign Video.
Where? In the GHA?
Yes.
And how does that? Explain that to me.
Well, for example, I would be here and the doctor would be sitting at their desk, and we'd have a screen, a computer screen with a camera, and on the screen you'd have a live interpreter, remotely based, and I could sign to them, and then they would do the voice over the doctor, and when the doctor speaks, they would sign for me. But it's not 100%, because
what do you mean it's not 100%? Oh, okay.
We get a lot of crashes. I much prefer a live in-person interpretation, because it's much more fluent.
Okay, is this a service that the GHA provides for deaf people in Gibraltar?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you have to ask them, you have to remind them still.
So you have to, when you book the appointment, call and remind them that you need this the day you go for your appointment with whatever.
Yeah, we can text them now to make an appointment.
Okay.
I used to have to ask my husband to do it, but now I can. I mean, I want to be independent. I don't want to have to rely on other people. It's like with my mother, you know, I grew up having to rely on her, so that's what I've been fighting for, my own independence. So yes, you do make an appointment, you ask them for signed video, you still have to remind them when you get them.
Okay. That's
and
good.
there's only 3 doctors with signed video. Remember?
I see.
Not the whole hospital.
Oh, it's not everybody.
No.
Okay, it's only 3 doctors. Who can we ask? Who are the 3 doctors in case anybody else needs to know this information? Who are the 3 doctors?
Well, it's just those 3.
Which 3? Are we allowed to mention their names?
I can't remember their names, to be honest. No, I can't remember their names at the moment.
Okay. So all the fighting that you've been doing for all these years in GIB, what has come of it? So this is maybe one thing that you've managed to achieve, which is a breakthrough in itself. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's available. What else is available for people who are deaf in GIB?
One of the worst things I would say, there isn't, one of the worst things I would say is the Gibraltar Broadcasting Corporation. I mean, even when we had those chief minister addresses during COVID, they didn't have an interpreter. They should have had an interpreter, but it was really important information. It was vital for our health. It was an emergency, and there still wasn't any access. I mean, I had to ask my husband to explain what was going on. I'm very much treated like a second-class citizen, which isn't fair. So I've been fighting with the GBC to ensure they provide subtitles and an on-screen interpreter. Or if, say, for instance, they want me to go for an interview, I want an interpreter to be provided, but they just don't do anything.
Why? What reason are you given? Money. Okay.
Money, of course.
Okay.
I mean, they have to set up something with the antenna and the equipment, so yeah, it's going to cost money.
Okay.
And that's the problem.
And does the money that the charity have, can that help with doing that?
No, it would be far
too expensive. Okay, because the reason I ask is because I've spoken to other charities, and there are already, for example, the breast cancer support group, who I'm quite close to. They raise money, and when the government provides certain services, but to enhance the services, they pay for nurses to be trained, for certain equipment. Then they buy the equipment. So that's why I've asked you that question, to find out whether, as GHITA, you can pay for things, to make things better, to enhance what's there.
It's really difficult to explain that point. I mean, at the moment, the process that we're going through is to fight with government so they will provide services to deaf people, like interpreters. I mean, and also to support GHITA to develop. So it's all, a matter of process.
And the problem with GBC, as you see it, is that the programs that they put out, like the local programs, have no sign language, no one signing. So what is it?
Nothing at all.
What is it that
for example, like when you were on,
Yes.
on Hub, or the powder room,
Yes.
they never get to watch it because it has no access, no subtitles, and that really makes me angry. I'm quite disappointed about that. I'd love to have known what you were talking about because I think you're a very interesting person, but unfortunately I can't. I've never been able to watch things like that, and that really annoys me.
And the news as well, I suppose the news as well is something, I mean...
Exactly the same. In Gibraltar, absolutely nothing is subtitled, except when a Spanish person comes and speaks Spanish, they'll translate it into English then in subtitles, but they won't do it as a matter of course for deaf people. So there you see.
Yeah, it's fine. You don't think
you've seen it.
As a hearing person, these are things that I don't think about. I mean, I have a podcast and we've had conversations before about the podcast, and I've thought how I know that there is a program where you can put it into just audio, you can put the subtitles on audio, but it is something that's quite expensive to do. But the reason for doing it on video is that on YouTube, it does it for you, and there's a little program that's quite easy, very accessible, which means that any interview that I put on YouTube, you can read it. And this is one of the reasons that I want to do it like this. So, I mean, what is
yes,
what?
I know. Yeah.
What is your?
I mean, it's not fair for deaf people, is it? Because we're just waiting for YouTube or for Facebook. We don't get it when it actually happens. What I want to be sitting at home with my family at 9 o'clock in the evening, watching the news and have subtitles. I don't want my husband to have to explain it or wait until tomorrow to actually watch the same news program. I'd like to be able to understand it and have a conversation with my husband about what's going on in Gibraltar. It's just not fair.
Is it like a respect? Do you think a lack of respect? Would you see it as that? I mean, it sounds quite a basic thing, but it would mean everything to a deaf person, I suppose, to be able to
of course
to watch the news. Something as basic as that. So anyway,
and also remember. A lot of deaf people actually can't read English, so they prefer a sign language interpreter.
Why?
So it should have both at the same time.
So why can't
the BBC News?
Why can't deaf people read English?
It's the same with hearing people. What happens is it's the same as hearing people. You listen and then you learn how to read.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the same in that respect. I mean, some hearing people can't read. It's the same with deaf people. Some people can't read.
Okay.
And it's also a matter of preference sometimes as well. They don't like reading English. They prefer sign language.
Okay.
And it has to be a choice. I mean, could you imagine if you just turn the sound off, right, on telly and asked all the hearing people to watch it? Do you think they'd be able to understand anything? Could you be able to follow the program if there was no sound? It's the same.
It's very difficult to do. You can
it's me. I want either subtitles or interpreter, and that's what I've been fighting the GBC about, especially government. I mean, they're supposed to be, funding the GBC to be able to do these things.
Of course. So, tell me, what's it like having Richard here and Richard being able to translate?
That's fantastic.
And how many people like Richard are there here in Jim?
Just one.
What? No. What?
Yeah. If you want to book an interpreter, you'd have to bring them from the UK and wait 2 weeks.
But is that because, I mean, I don't know much about it, but I was talking to Richard yesterday. He explained that you have different levels. You have people who are level 2 and Richard is level 6. Now, what does it take to become a level 6 interpreter?
Well, Richard's a fully qualified interpreter.
Okay. But there's no one. How can there be no one else in GHITA
what you have to do is go on a course. You do level 1, level 2, level 3, and then you go up to level 6, which is interpreter training, and that's how you become qualified. And we must have fully qualified interpreters here. It's very important for our communication. If they're not qualified, there's a great risk things will go wrong.
And how many deaf people are there in Gibraltar?
Nobody in Gibraltar wanted to, become an interpreter. That's the problem. I mean, thank God we've got him.
Why don't people?
We're grateful just to have Richard.
Why don't people want to become interpreters? What is the reason?
I think because they're not aware. The government hasn't done anything to encourage people to become interpreters. That's why we fought for the BSL Act, and now we're trying to actually fight to have them put some services. That's why we want a GCSE in the curriculum, so the children at least now can start learning, and when they leave school they can think about wanting to become an interpreter and choose that as a university course. It's to encourage them.
Okay, I want to ask you something. So if a child is born deaf now and goes to mainstream school, what is in place that was different from when you were a child now?
Well, it's very different from my time. Now it's much easier when a child's born deaf. They're tested immediately, and the doctor can then decide. And what they do is they use cochlear implants.
Okay.
Yeah.
But would that cure? I mean, would that cure deafness?
And then they go to a mainstream school. I mean, of course, they're still deaf, but it means they can hear better and they can hear speech better. I mean, I don't know. I haven't had one, so I remember my father offering that I had an implant, and I said, well, no. It's like, I accept who I am. I'm happy as who I am. I can't ask for more. I wouldn't ask for more. My father was quite disappointed that I didn't want one, but I was like, no, I'm happy as I am.
But they had to respect your decision.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
And what has been for you the biggest challenge for you as a mother, as a wife? Even now that your children are grown up, and what is the biggest challenge? For example, if you need to call somebody.
I'm very proud of my kids.
Yes, they've done really well.
Oh yes, my children are absolutely fantastic, and likewise my husband. I mean, they've been very supportive when I ask. Very rare will they say no. So they've been very helpful, especially my daughter. She's very, very helpful. I mean, of course, my whole family is, but I was lucky, to have my family around me, and my brother and sister as well have helped me a lot.
Yes.
They're always there for me anytime I call.
It's very important. The support that your family.
Yeah, and my friends as well. I've got a lot of good friends. They'll make appointments for me at restaurants or for holidays and things like that. So.
What do you do if you need to call, for example, like a very silly thing? How does she call her mum in the morning to say, hi mum, because her mum's getting on? How are you feeling today? How does she do that? Text messaging.
Texting
yes.
Changed, yeah. Technology.
Thank God.
Thank God for technology.
And thank God your mum understands text, because my mother doesn't text. So I have to call her. Yeah, she's of the other generation that's too old now to really learn how to text. Good, so your mum can text, at least you can text each other. So text messaging, the mobile phone was a huge game changer.
Oh, a huge change for the deaf community, absolutely, yes. I mean, we use WhatsApp, and we've also got FaceTime as well, so we can do video chats and we can sign to each other through the telephone.
That's
which
fantastic.
Is amazing. Absolutely.
So you keep up with all your friends from school. So I want to ask you.
Yes.
Talking about your friends from school, last year you appeared outside. Was it the Tower of London, in a mosaic thing? There was a photo of you in London. Tell me about that.
Oh yes. So I mean, it's a small world, the deaf community, because. Stephen is a photographer. He's deaf. His wife, who's also deaf, her name's Emma. She went to school with me. And Stephen was born in Gibraltar himself.
Oh, okay.
But his father was in the Navy, you see.
Okay.
Yeah. So one day he just asked me if he could take my photo in Gibraltar for its mosaic. It's an exhibition called Mosaic. So they wanted a picture of me in Gibraltar to be in that display. And it was in City Lit in London, a college, near King's Cross.
That's right, near King's Cross.
Yes, and so many people have asked me about that. Yeah. I mean, it was great to show Gibraltar in a good light. So I'm quite proud of that.
Absolutely, I'm sure. You should be very proud anyway, Maite.
Yeah, I wish my father could have seen it. Maybe he's looking down.
Of course he is. Of course he is, for sure. What are your hobbies? How do you relax? Because I know that she goes to Mum's Dance, which is in case people don't know, it's a fantastic group of mothers mostly who meet and exercise to 80s music. Now, being deaf, how do you hear the music?
Well, I can't. You're right. I can't hear the music at all.
Does she feel the beats?
I can't even feel the vibrations because the speaker's very small, so it doesn't generate enough vibrations. What I do is I'll follow Nicole. She's a lovely woman and very easy for me to communicate with. And the same with all the mummies, they're great, they really help me out. And I feel like we're like a sister group, like family, and we're always having a good laugh together. We make mistakes when we're doing it, and I love doing it. Yeah, I hope to continue doing that. I do it 4 times a week.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, well, it helps me to keep my life in balance, it helps me relax, I can switch off, de-stress, so it's really good, it helps me a lot.
What other hobbies do you have?
I sew, I really love sewing. I do work in felts, I do Christmas decorations and, sew on the little sparkly things, and I also do crochet.
Okay. This podcast is called Why Bother? It's a question that I think everybody has asked themselves. Have you ever thought to myself, why am I bothering? No. I mean, I wanted to do this podcast to show people in Gibraltar, my community, to let them know what a deaf person looks like, so it can help them in future to realise, that's a deaf person, and hope they will learn a bit of signing as well, that'd be great, and to help the deaf community, and it'd be really great if members of the community could learn some sign language. I saw a thing on Facebook trying to teach people to learn sign language. And how to do, at least start with your name to raise awareness for the charity, and they were teaching you how to do the letters so you could sign your name. Can't people go like further than that to really get somebody or to train as an interpreter?
Well, you have to go on a sign language course. You can do it online, or
does it take
we can bring.
Yeah.
Okay, just to go back, before I learnt British Sign Language, I could sign a bit, but I wasn't fluent. I mean, I came back to Gibraltar, I didn't need sign language because there was nobody to speak to, and I was just lip reading, so I wasn't fluent in sign language until I was 47. I started to go on a BSL course myself in Gibraltar. So I went on a 3-week full-time course, and I did level 1, and I passed that, and then I went on to level 2. That was 6 weeks, but these are full-time courses.
Okay.
And so, you know, at that point I started to understand who I was, you know, who I actually am, and what my language is, and where my identity lies, and my culture. You know, that's how, from that point, I started to become an advocate for deaf rights. And GHITA, I became involved with them, and you know, we help each other to try and achieve the ends. You know, without them, you know, I couldn't do it on my own. So together we're able. It's Edgar Triai, he's the chair.
Oh, he's the chair.
Of GHITA, and is very good and is very helpful, and he fights very, very hard, and so we should be thankful we have him as well.
Okay, what percentage of the community in Gibraltar is deaf?
I know 3. Can I just do an edit there? Because are you asking how many deaf people who sign, or how many people with their hearing loss? Because the figure is very different.
Oh,
so we
interesting.
have
okay,
5 deaf people who use sign language, but there's an estimated 2,500 people who have a hearing loss who use a hearing aid. So they're the type of people that need subtitles.
So
and things
2,500 people. I mean,
yeah, they're mostly older people,
but they still have a right to see the news and a right to all these things.
Yes,
so I'm
they
hoping
have the right to be able to read subtitles.
This is watched and listened to by people, and something will be done. I'm hoping, Maite, that with a new government, you know, maybe this will, you know,
hopefully
work towards getting something done.
Well, I mean, that's my dream, you know, to achieve that.
I was going to ask
BSL and the official introduction of the BSL Act, and also, you know, for interpreting to be available in hospitals, and to have sign language taught in schools, and that's what's going to help the deaf community who use sign language.
So if something happens and there's an emergency and you have to go to the hospital, how do you it's very difficult.
It's not easy at all.
Absolutely.
It's very, very difficult.
You have to get somebody who understands to come and...
Yes, A&E. I mean, if I'm ill, it's very, very difficult to communicate. I often have to bring my family member, my husband, my son, or my mum, or whatever, because when you're ill, it's very, very difficult to communicate, and it's quite difficult to use sign video in those situations. You need to have an interpreter available. But there's only one. But you wouldn't be able to bring an interpreter in emergency from the UK, and by that time I'd be better anyway. So really, we need full-time interpreters who live and work in Gibraltar. That's the only solution.
It's incredible. You don't think that it does involve so much. So I'm really glad that you've come, and I'm really glad that we've got this out. Is there anything else that you want to add, Maite? Anything I haven't asked you that you feel is important that people should know?
Well, I just want to remind everybody, if you're interested in learning BSL, then do contact GHITA. There's a company called Sign Code who provides training as well, and please go out and learn some sign language. You know, that will help for the future. You could become a teacher of the deaf, for example, in Gibraltar, which we don't have. We need a deaf tutor to be able to teach deaf children, and then they'll get better results in their education. I mean, that's another thing. So yeah, I mean, so if you want to learn sign language, please contact GHITA.
Incredible. So one question, it's a silly question that I ask all my guests. If you were on a desert island and you could just take one person, who would you take and why?
My husband, of course.
Good answer, right answer. Yes.
Yes, of course.
How long have you been married?
Yes, I can't live without my husband.
Of course. And he's
35 years.
Yeah, and what is another question that I should have asked you really? Who's been very inspirational for you during your life? Who has inspired you to carry on fighting, to achieve everything you've achieved, Maite?
Ooh. I think I've learned a lot from Emma in the UK. Elif. It's Emma Elif. She's a very good role model. She's been to university. She went to Durham University and studied BSL in linguistics. And she's working with deaf children as a teacher. She's deaf herself, and she teaches deaf children.
Amazing.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Yeah. Wow. I mean, of course, that's normal. Deaf people can do anything. Of course. Yeah. And now she's the chair of Ambition. Yeah, I'll write it down. We'll do an edit there. She works for City Lit, and she's a BSL tutor now. So I've learnt a hell of a lot from her. She's quite an important deaf person, and there are lots of other professional deaf people that I've learnt things from as well. There are a lot of deaf people in the UK that have studied and are very successful in their jobs.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Richard, for being here and giving up your time to do this as well, to highlight everything. I wish you all the best. If there's anything else I can do, I will do it happily, gladly. And
thank you.
And I hope this is a first. Is this a first, Mike? Did you know of any other interviews that have been done on deaf people?
At GBC.
You have had some.
Yeah, and at the university.
That's good.
I've done presentations for various organisations because I want to encourage people to become more aware of deaf people and know how to communicate with them.
We'll all try and do as much as we can, and we hope lots of people watch this and can help, okay? Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for inviting me.
Pleasure.